Dark Psychology and Manipulation. The Practical Guide to Understanding and Using Mind Control Tactics, Hypnosis, Brainwashing, Body Language, Persuasion, and NLP Techniques to Analyze and Influence People. Written by Albert Cox, Good Story Publishing. Narrated by Jack Nolan. Part 1. Dark Psychology, Manipulation and Persuasion Techniques, Brainwashing, Mind Control Tactics, and Hypnosis. Introduction. The brain is wider than the sky. Emily Dickinson. You all probably have heard several times in your life that knowledge is power. And so I am going to start this book with that, and this strong quote from Emily Dickinson that shows us the depth of the human psyche, which further strengthens the need to understand it. While psychology in general can be called the study of human behavior, dark psychology, on the other hand, focuses on the human mind in its subconscious state, and the emotional predisposition of human beings to manipulate others, and similarly fall prey to others' dark tactics. I'm sure that none of us wants to become a victim of manipulation in life, but sometimes, knowingly or unknowingly, it happens to us, and it happens quite often. Every day, people like you and me face dark psychological tactics from people we know quite well, and might not even realize it because we are not aware of identifying such tactics. The purpose of this book is not only to help you become aware of how common manipulation tactics are, and the signs you must be looking out for, but also to remind you that it is very easy to fall into the clutches of a manipulator, especially when they are from the circle of people you trust. There are some people who are using these tactics intentionally to get what they want, and at the same time, there are others who end up using dark tactics without even being aware of the same. For the latter half of the population, dark tactics are usually imbibed in them from childhood through their parents or someone else in the family. In this book, I speak from experience, and I have included everything that I have learned over the years about dark psychology and how it can affect you. I hope it will help you uncover some answers that you have been looking for. Chapter 1. Dark Psychology. What is this? The word dark psychology describes the investigation of darker aspects of human nature. The human soul is filled with darkness. A similar pattern commonly reappears throughout history. When people appear to be living peacefully next to each other, madness suddenly breaks out. Tolerance evolves into resentment, which then leads to malice and hatred. Hatred spreads throughout society as formerly respectable people demand the destruction of the enemy. Neighbors are being killed by neighbors in a split second, and all hell is bursting out. What causes this evil, cruelty, and darkness in the human psyche to originate? Sometimes characteristics that incline someone to certain things are there at birth. Psychopaths are those people whose ego pushes them down a dark path and leaves them with little room for regret or empathy. Yet what is surprising is how frequently evil is perpetrated or encouraged by individuals who lack these qualities. Scientists are constantly exploring this discipline, which is still relatively new, and trying to understand all of its complicated components. However, what we understand is that dark psychology covers everything from manipulative behavior to self-destructive tendencies. As a result, it is a very intriguing field of study that has a lot to teach us about who we are as people. In this chapter, we'll explore the field of dark psychology and its origin. Defining dark psychology. The study of dark psychology explores how people's tendency to prey on others connects to the human psyche. Every human being has the ability to harm other people and living things. Some people act on such impulses, but most control or suppress this tendency. Dark psychology aims to comprehend the ideas, emotions, and viewpoints that motivate human predatory conduct. Dark psychology assumes that output is always motivated by some kind of logical, goal-oriented purpose. Dark psychology is fundamentally about comprehending and taking advantage of the flaws in the human psyche. Those who practice dark psychology may easily influence others to act according to their desires by recognizing how they feel and think. This may be done for a variety of reasons, such as persuading someone to commit crimes, or persuading them to buy something they don't need. Dark psychology could be employed for evil aims, yet some people use it for better things. For instance, therapists may employ dark psychology strategies to assist patients in overcoming their phobias and fears. In other situations, police officials may employ smart psychological techniques to compel offenders to confess. Dark psychology includes everything that defines our dark side. This proverbial disease affects all races, religions, and cultures. From the time we are born until the time we die, we have a side that some have labeled evil, and others have described as deviant, criminal, and pathological. Dark psychology presents a third philosophical framework that sees these actions in a different light from religious doctrine and current social science approaches. We want to think of ourselves as a kind species. Therefore, it makes sense that we would think these ideas and sentiments wouldn't exist. Fortunately, none of us ever act on these impulses, but regrettably we all seem to have them. Dark psychology suggests that some individuals act impulsively or premeditatively in response to the same ideas, emotions, and perceptions. The evident distinction between them and others is that they take action when others only have transient impulses or sensations of doing so. The following 5 principles are essential for understanding dark psychology. 1. Dark psychology refers to the study of how people think, feel, and perceive things, and their ability to prey on others for no apparent cause. Dark psychology proposes the idea that, as all action is purposeful, goal-oriented, and theorized via modus operandi, the closer a person gets to the black hole of pure evil, the more they have a reason for their desires. Dark psychology implies there are people who come close to perfect evil. 2. Dark psychology is a characteristic of all people. Throughout history, this concept has had an impact. This aspect of the human experience is maintained by all ethnicities, communities, and individuals that live there. The kindest people have this domain of evil, but they never act on it, and express less violent sentiments and ideas. 3. Dark psychology might be disregarded in its latent state due to its tendency to be mistaken for abnormal psychopathy. This underlying propensity to manifest itself as active, harmful acts has a long history. The psychopath is a predator who has no remorse for his crimes, according to contemporary psychology and psychiatry. According to dark psychology, there is indeed a continuum of intensity, ranging from violent thoughts and sentiments to extreme victimization, and violent behavior without a justifiable reason or motive. 4. Dark psychology presupposes that everyone has the propensity to be violent. Every individual possesses this potential, and several internal and environmental conditions raise the likelihood that this potential may materialize as unpredictable behaviors. These actions have a predatory aspect and can occasionally occur without cause. According to dark psychology, humans skew the predator-prey relationship. No other living thing shares the phenomenon of dark psychology. It only exists in humans. Other living things may also commit violent acts and mayhem, but only humans can do so randomly. 5. Understanding the underlying factors that contribute to dark psychology would help society identify, classify, and perhaps even lessen the risks associated with its influence. Understanding the principles of dark psychology has 2 advantages. First, by acknowledging that we all possess this capacity for evil, those who are aware of it can lessen the likelihood that it will manifest. Second, understanding dark psychology's principles accords with our species' prehistoric struggle for survival. The dark psychology triad is a collection of 3 personality qualities that are frequently present in people who are manipulative, heartless, and lacking in compassion or empathy. While these 3 characteristics are usually seen in the same person, they can also exist separately. Narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Any combination of these characteristics can make a person dangerous, so they should be avoided. With a variety of explanations that act as shields against negative emotions like guilt or shame, all dark qualities can be linked to the general inclination to prioritize one's interests and goals above those of others, even up to the point of finding pleasure in hurting others. History of dark psychology. Dark psychology's roots and nature are used to comprehend how a typical, well-adjusted person might end up in the spotlight after committing an unthinkable act. Atrocities committed by one person against another have been occurring indefinitely since the beginning of recorded history, at any hour of the day or night. It is astounding how ostensibly good individuals may take part in or permit such atrocities to happen, even though they are horrific. Theoretically, dark psychology is an amalgam of the ideas of Alfred Adler and Carl Jung, the author's clinical work as a psychologist, his professional and academic observations as a forensic and criminal psychologist, and the numerous conversations he has had with friends, family, and co-workers over the years about deviant behavior. Subjective processing is a notion in dark psychology. Every person has ideas, feelings, behaviors, and cognitions, and mental responses that have an impact on their behavior. On the other hand, a person's actions affect their thoughts and feelings. The triad or trinity of human experience is defined as an orbital system of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Adler referred to this structure as a constellation. The dark triad is a terrible concoction of malicious personality qualities some people possess, well, seeming like the theme of a horror film or video game. 2 scholars first used the phrase dark triad in 2002. It represents a concoction of 3 adverse personality traits that are distinct but connected. The dark trio of personalities includes narcissism, entitled self-importance, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, strategic exploitation and deceit. It was defined by Kevin Williams and Delroy Paulhus in 2002. They demonstrated that each of the above traits is obviously on a continuum and that we're all at least somewhat narcissistic, Machiavellian, and psychopathic. Historically, these 3 characteristics have been researched only in clinical groups, for example, criminals. None of us want to fall prey to manipulation, but it does occur frequently. Although the dark triad may not directly target us, dark psychology techniques are used against regular, everyday individuals like you and me all the time. These strategies are frequently used in television commercials, online advertisements, sales tactics, or even our manager's actions. You will undoubtedly come across these strategies if you have kids, especially teens, as they experiment with different ways to acquire everything they want and gain autonomy. In actuality, those you love and trust frequently engage in subtle persuasion and manipulation. In contrast to earlier times, when philosophers only speculated about the inner workings of human nature, some psychologists have recently put up tests to test it. Researchers have looked at the dark side of humanity, comparing it to historical processes. Stanley Milgram, a Yale psychologist, conducted his experiment 10 years before Zimbardo's. This now famous test had a straightforward setup. The participants would perform electric shocks on those they could only hear while seated in a chair. They were made to feel that administering these shocks would aid in their learning. The volunteers pressing the buttons were unaware that the voices were only cassettes. The researcher prodded the participant to deliver a shock that was greater and stronger every time the supposed learner gave a bad answer. In actuality, the student would have died if the strongest level of electricity had shocked them. Unexpectedly, only about 65% of the volunteers delivered the last 450-volt bolts, not to imply that every one of them reached a minimum of 300 volts. According to Milgram, the study's main finding, and the one that most urgently calls for an explanation, is that people are very eager to go to nearly any extreme in the direction of authority. Ordinary people could become actors in a horrifically destructive process by simply going about their daily business without any particular malice. Milgram's experiment has amazing explanatory power, as it attempts to explain how such a horrible event as the Holocaust could occur. Even if regular people are not hostile, the act of complying with orders and doing as one is told can set the stage for horrific atrocities to occur. How was it possible for so many Germans to voluntarily join the Nazi movement? Many people's minds are boggled by this question. Ron Jones, a history teacher at a high school, struggled to convey this to his students, so he chose to show them by doing it. Over the course of 5 days, Jones brainwashed his students into the Third Wave, a bogus movement that he had founded. He gave the pupils a sense of belonging based on group thinking. By beginning with basic exercises in discipline and a few catchphrases, the pupils seemed to enjoy the movement as the experiments went on. Hundreds of more teenagers joined in who weren't even in the class. Jones had a mechanism to ensure that the rigorous regulations were being obeyed. After establishing them, he picked a handful of the children to give an account of the others. To his astonishment, a lot more people came out voluntarily. Those who were judged to not be sufficiently invested in the cause were tried and punished. The instructor had to adjourn early since everything had gotten out of control. The Third Wave experiment demonstrates how easily people may be seduced by issues through teen dynamics and how dangerously out of control they can become. Another experiment shows that Professor Philip Zimbardo of Stanford divided a group of willing student volunteers into 2 groups at random in 1971. The guards would be one group and the inmates would be the other. The outcomes were unexpected. It appears that a large number of guards quickly came to accept their positions. They gave harsh punishments to the inmates and treated them harshly. A certain level of utter despair and tolerance for the abuse crept up on the prisoners' side. As Zimbardo phrased it, he aimed to show the ease with which ordinary individuals could be taught to engage in antisocial behaviors by placing them in circumstances where they remained anonymous. Or they might think of others in ways that influenced them as less than human, as adversaries or objects. 6 days into the experiment, it was necessary to abandon it since things had gone so awry. The volunteers' actions indicated to the researcher running the experiment that they had assimilated their assigned responsibilities. He concluded that the participants' behavior was a result of the jail environment. It served as an example of how systematic and circumstantial influences can work to impact individual behavior in harmful or good directions, frequently without our awareness, as per Zimbardo. Therefore, history has shown us the various awful deeds that mankind is capable of. These demons frequently start as seemingly good people. Hitler, a failed artist, began his political career by giving sermons in pubs. The members of Pol Pot's gang were Parisian cafe-goers who were activists and students. But common people joining their bandwagon also contributed to the growth of these populist politicians.